Hello and welcome everyone. I am excited to share our next Luna Talks lunchtime translation event with you. Today we are going to be walking through ensuring brand consistency in your translated materials. So hi everyone, I am Una Hartzell-Baird and my pronouns are she, her. I have worked at Luna Language Services over the last 8 years, and in the last 4, I've served as the Director of Translation. So you can reach me anytime at una@luna360.com, and I'm so excited to share a little bit more about branding and brand style guides to ensure consistency with translation. So I have with me today Naomi. She will be our American Sign Language interpreter. I have pinned my screen and hers. Please feel free to adjust your screen as you see fit as well. So let's dive in. Our goal today is to break down brand style guides with the purpose of using them to support translation and consistency of your brand message in translation. So we'll walk through understanding the basics of style guides. We'll also discuss identifying resources to help your translation partner with communicating your brand message. And we'll walk through building a list of considerations when designing and implementing a brand style guide for translation. So I included this delicious picture of ice cream here because this is such one of those things in the summer. It's been hot in Indiana. And when I look at this picture, I think about my favorite brand of ice cream. And I think about other brands too, things that I might pass down the street as well. And depending on whether or not you like ice cream, you might have a favorite brand from a grocery store, or you may have a favorite local shop that you go to during the summers. And when you think about that ice cream shop and that brand, I'm sure there's a number of emotions that come up for you as well. And this is a big part of what we want to articulate through our brand style guides, especially when we have to consider the additional layer of communicating in different languages. So let's walk through the basics. What is a style guide? Why do we use it? What goes in it? So on a very, very basic level, most of us are familiar with the style guides that we use in school in formatting papers. So you may already have been familiar with and use MLA, APA, and the Chicago style guides. So these essentially tell us how things should be formatted. The next level with that, when it comes to brands, is having your brand style guide. And we use these to communicate consistency, which builds trust with our consumers. And the things that go into a brand style guide are examples of language that should be used or should not be used when talking about your specific brand. Formatting, just like those MLA and APA citations. And this can be things like what type of font is used when brand communications go out, as well as the minimum or maximum font sizes that should be used for your brand. Things like colors, the voice of your brand, and the personas of your brand and your consumers. So I have a couple of really great examples of language translation specific style guides. Here on the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see a section of the style guide from Duolingo, which if you're not familiar with Duolingo, it's a language learning app. And their big focus here is that it is free language education for the world. So they even have a number of different catchphrases and slogans that they list that are always associated with their brand, with their product. And they recommend that these be localized and translated in the same way every single time. That's something that seems like it would be intuitive and understood, but you can't provide too much direction to a translation partner team. So It's always great to spell things out. On the right-hand side, you'll see the MailChimp content style guide, and they have a section specifically about how to write for translation. So this is assuming that you're writing in English and you're writing for translation into other languages. And they even spell out very specifically, use active voice, use subject, verb, object, sentence structure, and use positive words when talking about positive situations. Language is context and culture specific. So again, you can't be too precise in how you detail the communication around your brand. Let's talk about some basic do's and don'ts next when it comes to ensuring that brand consistency through a style guide. Certainly be consistent. Be consistent in how you apply your formatting and in what rules of language you're following and how. Be intentional about your word choices and what should and shouldn't be included when communication about your brand goes out into the world. Define your assets. And these are going to be things like the images used to represent your brand logo, the colors that are associated with your brand, even the fonts. Some brands use specialty fonts designed just for them. And so having access to anything like that is critical when setting up a style guide. Next, do define your clients. So know exactly what that client persona looks like and how that client interacts with your brand, and confirm the appropriateness of any humor. Anytime a brand is writing in its source language, there's going to be language that doesn't necessarily translate exactly. In these instances, a translation partner is really going to aim to localize that to the local language and culture for your target goals. Some don'ts to remember. Don't think it's close enough. Again, because brand style guides are about consistency, and that consistency is the key to building trust, you have to be consistent in how you apply your style guide rules and your formatting rules. So if you always use a serial comma, make sure it's always present. And if not, then don't sprinkle it in. Define your clients as everyone. It's a rare brand that truly has universal appeal. And so you want to be really consistent and narrow down exactly who it is that you are defining as your client. Don't ignore the details. It's going to be the little things that can really pop out when there is an inconsistency present. So make sure that you're accounting for details and even perhaps over communicating the importance of those in your style guide. And finally, don't forget about symbols. We've seen a trend where symbols are being used more and more to represent words, right? Sometimes this is as simple as using a plus sign to represent the word and sometimes it's the use of emojis, but not all emojis are used equally across cultures and languages. So this is an area where you'll want to be especially specific about what your symbols represent, so that the equivalence or transcreation can happen in your target languages. So when you're building out a translation-specific style guide to ensure that brand consistency, some things that you'll want to include are specific language that should be used when speaking about your brand. So just like Duolingo has that list of slogans and catchphrases, this is a great place to put language that's important to your specific brand. Likewise, include a list of things to be avoided if there are specific phrases or words that should not be used when communicating about your brand. Identify your brand voice. And here, with the brand voice, it's really the personality of your brand. So, is your brand really friendly and informal? Is it more authoritative? What are you trying to communicate, and what is that personality like for your brand? Defining that in your style guide can help your translation team better understand your brand and then be better able to select really specific language to target that and meet your mission of consistency. Include what the visual representations are of your brand. So as I'd mentioned, this can be as simple as your logo, the colors associated with your brand. Maybe there are even very specific images that you use to represent your brand. And know how these may need to be changed for other languages or other cultures. Develop those client personas. And I can't emphasize that enough. When you know who you are trying to reach and what that consumer looks like, it makes it much, much easier to communicate your message. If you're using a general style guide when it comes to formatting your writing, that's great to include in a brand style guide as well. And of course, your mission and vision can be the cornerstone upon which you build all of the rest of this documentation. Now that we walked through some basics, let's talk about some resources that you may already have or that you can build out in order to help your translation teams communicate your message consistently across all languages. So first, if you have previously translated materials that you have approved and that you feel strongly represent your brand, this is a great place to start. Likewise, if you are adhering to the language rules that other organizations or entities are following, for example, the World Health Organization or the CDC, then including links to their materials can also help your translation team. The next level of resources includes glossaries, trademark and copyrighted terms, and then existing translation memories if they have been approved and again, strongly represent your brand. With glossaries, we can break this down further into a few different sections. So glossaries can include language specific to your company, specific to your industry, the audience that you're speaking to, even search engine optimization, which becomes more and more relevant and crucial each day. Additionally, language around proper nouns. So depending on where your brand is, and if you are a multinational brand, or if you're a brand looking to reach out to speakers of the target languages within your local community, you may have your brand already translated into other languages, and that's great to include in a glossary. Or you may be specific about what proper nouns need to stay in your source language versus being translated. And then of course, all of the things that make language wonderful and wildly messy: jargon, slang, idioms, puns, any type of really culture specific or humor that's really culture specific can be defined in a glossary as well, so that the translation team can ensure a good consistency across all of your communications. And once we've sort of pulled together some of these resources and we've gone through some of those basics of what should be in a style guide, here are some questions that you can ask yourself regarding your brand in order to build out a really deep guide to ensure that consistency. So I'll break this up into two different sections. This is the brand general questions that you can ask yourself. What is our mission and what are our values? This is, again, the cornerstone upon which you can build that brand persona and know exactly what the right fit will be in terms of the clients you're looking to serve. How can we describe that voice and tone for our brand? Likewise, who are our competitors and what differentiates us from them? Knowing the types of things that you do as a brand is just as important as knowing the types of things that you don't do and what the difference is between how you conduct yourself versus what your competitors are doing. And then also, who is our audience? Pretty broadly speaking, in our source language, who is that target audience that we're looking towards? And then when we're talking about the language specific side of a style guide, you'll want to ask yourself, What cultures do we serve or do we want to serve? And what languages are encompassed in those cultures? Languages come in a number of dialects as well. And so you'll want to be as specific as possible about the types of people that you're serving and the languages that they speak. How do we want that audience, that client, to interact with our brand? Does our tone need adjustment for this audience? So perhaps if you're a very informal, friendly kind of brand, you may need to adjust your tone to include more formality depending on the culture that you are aiming to work with. And what about our colors and images? Again, some colors and images could be deemed offensive in other cultures. And so your goal will be to make sure that there's a really good match between how you want your brand communicated and how that's actually visually reflected in addition to the words that you're translating. So consistency is really the key in developing brand trust with consumers. And the time that's invested in developing a translation style guide is going to pay off for years to come, because it's so much easier to maintain a relationship than to start a new one. Even though this can feel really overwhelming at times, it's something that we encourage. And because of that, we've even created a brand style guide builder for translation. And so we will be sharing that along with a copy of this recording as well. At this point, I would love to take some questions. So if you do have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat or feel free to unmute yourself and share. Thank you, Tatiana. Tatiana says, thanks, it was very informative. One of the questions I often get is, this is an overwhelming process, so where do we even start? And I think one of the biggest things is to look at the resources you currently have. So if you already have a style guide that's being used by a marketing team, most of the time, there'll be at least something outlined about communication in your brand. And that's a great place to start. And then taking that checklist of sources and just going one by one and beginning to define some of those assets and define your brand persona. And then the third section that I would say would be to go ahead and really define the languages that you're working with and the cultures that are part of your community when you're looking to translate and communicate that brand in other languages. Since we don't have other questions coming in, I will pull another one I commonly hear, which is, what happens if, I've provided the style guide, but once I have my translation back, I realized there were some additional things that really should be added in there. And now I need to have my translation looked at again and certain words or phrases replaced. And this at Luna is not a problem. We love it, especially when internal reviewers are able to review the content we translate, because no one knows the brand as well as someone who's working on behalf of the brand. And so typically what we will do is we will make edits and apply those suggestions, and then we will add them to the translation memories that we create for our clients. So that way in the future, that doesn't have to be an ongoing edit. And likewise, then what you can do is you can take that information and put it inside of your style guide once you've found something. So a style guide is not necessarily going to be a one and done type of document. It's really a living, breathing, and ever evolving type of document that's going to grow and change as your brand grows and changes as well. And likewise, as cultures shift and as perhaps you add additional languages to what you need, there'll be more room to expand on that style guide as well. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and give us just another minute or so if there are any questions popping into your head as we're talking. Great. Well, I appreciate you all for coming today and attending. The recording as well as our style guide will be made available as an email. So we'll send you the links for those. Anytime that you have any questions at all, please feel free to reach me by email. I'm Una, UNA, at luna360.com. You can reach me anytime via email. And thank you so much for joining me for this short Luna Talks translation lunch session. Have a great day, everyone.